we're pretty different than a lot of the stuff that they're doing, a lot of the stuff that's, I guess, popular right now. But we're making music that we like, and I write music that I like, and I don't think that's something that I'll ever compromise.
Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Belgian Jasper. If this is your first time in the channel, hit subscribe right now.
Casey, thank you so much for your time. This is always exciting for me when I get to speak to somebody for the very first time. I usually don't ask about, oh, tell me about your band and the history and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not very well caught up with my ancient Buddhism. So can you just quickly help me understand both the meaning behind the name of the band, but maybe more interesting, what of that concept related so much to you guys that you chose that concept as a band name?
Yeah, so basically, first and foremost, we are not Buddhists, and we don't make it our whole identity, the band name. But you know, it is a band name first and foremost, and I really chose it because I like the I was young, of course, choosing it, and I was into spiritual philosophies and things like that. I was very much into that stuff. I still am. Consider myself a spiritual person,
right?
And I really liked the meaning of the Sanskrit phrase, the Sanskrit word Hinayana, and how it is basically in the context of Buddhism. It was a lesser path or smaller vehicle, lesser path to enlightenment. Some people might say path of suffering or suffering. I like those ideas, and I like that sort of concept relating to some of the lyrics and some of the concepts and the music and that spiritual part of that. And so that is that's one of the reasons I chose that band name. Now, is the more and more we go on, the more and more we get asked this question, the more and more it just becomes a matter of, yeah, well, I mean, it's a band name that we're not Buddhists, and I mean, it's still cool though. We still like it, and we still stand by it. So yeah, but I think that it's kind of that spiritual element there, and also just that path of suffering, the humble path, and I like that. It's more of the Sanskrit word meaning than anything else.
Have you given up caring about all the mispronunciations of the name, or does it still bother you?
I mean, we get asked it so often. Like, people will say, "How do you pronounce it? How do you spell it?" It's such just I pretty much assume now that if I'm telling someone the band name, I'm going to have to sound it out or spell it to them,
Right, for sure.
So it doesn't bother me as much anymore. Maybe in the beginning it sort of was like, okay. No, I'm used to it now for sure.
Awesome. Okay, well, so let's be a little bit more serious now. Let's focus on Shatter and Fall, the reason that we're talking today. As we're talking, we're 2 weeks away from the launch of the album. You come across very calm, very relaxed. Is that just a facade, and underneath there's like a ton of energy raging, or are you pretty much, well, this has been in the can for a while and kind of it is what it is, and you're just in the moment, or are you really getting those nerves? Are they starting to work up and having this big Napalm Records release? I mean, it is a milestone for the band. Let's be real. So what's your mentality right now?
I mean, I think that's a great question, and honestly, I mean, like you mentioned, like, it has been something that we've been working on for so long. It's more of a relief for me to get it put out. I'm less nervous than I am I'm just going to be relieved when it's out. I'm excited about it being put out at this point. Like, I've listened to these songs so many times,
it's old news for you.
Yeah, it's definitely been something we've been hearing until our ears are bleeding, for a long time. And so I'm confident and I'm happy with how it turned out, and so I'm just excited at this point. I think that I'm really, I think that I'm more I'm more excited, and just I'm looking forward to that relief and excitement whenever we get to see reviews and all that other stuff, and have everybody, all our fans, like listen to all the new songs. I mean, you can only pick a handful of songs for the singles, but like we really put a lot of effort into the album, and I can't wait. Like, if we stand by every single track on the album, I think that's how we all feel. And honestly, we could have made any one of the songs on the album a single, and we would have been just as confident in it. But you know, more excitement than nerves at this point. I think the nerves are coming from the nerves are about the tour more than
right. Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, many bands will tell you that the second album is the hardest in their career to make. And in many cases, in the quote unquote old days, or the before times, when, you know, pandemics didn't pause the world for a few years, usually that was because there was a time pressure. Like, the first album for many bands, not every band, but for many bands, is a kind of like an anthology of greatest hits that you've been writing while you were playing in bars and whatever, and you've got all these years to work on that first album. And all of a sudden, you put your first album out and you have to write and release a second album. And there's that time pressure. You guys, obviously, releases were pushed out a little bit, and this took longer than I'm sure you wanted to a few years ago. What was that for you guys? Was this also a hard one to write, or the forced delays, was that at the end of the day a bit of a blessing in disguise to fine tune and let the buns be in the oven a little bit longer? Like, was that weird?
I think it's a combination of both. The album was a little bit difficult to write, and you mentioned that, you know, this second album thing, and it was something that I personally take seriously. I mean, I've always been told your second album, not only is it the toughest one to write, but also the most important. And I don't know how true that is, but I took it seriously, and it was our first full length on Napalm Records.
Right.
So our first full length on Napalm Records, it sure felt like a first album to us in a lot of ways, because of that. And so we were taking it super seriously. I think that it really, like, was a little bit of both, like what you were saying. Like, I would say it was good that we took as long as we did, because we gave it our full asses. We gave it a full ass effort, and we put all of our passion and effort into these songs and into this album, and it just took a long time. It just took a while, and we really didn't want to have any filler or any tracks on there that were just kind of like whatever tracks. Like, we wanted it to be a pick any song, and that's going to be, you know, one that you'll enjoy potentially, and really not like, and one that actually had effort put into it. We didn't want any filler. We didn't want any stuff that was going to be like, ugh, you know, we get to this part of the album and then it's just kind of falls apart. And that happens a lot. I mean, I've heard that over and over again with bands. You know, I think that we're actually now approaching a position where we are not trying to take as much time on the next album. We do not want to go 3 years between releases again. That was not that was not something that we wanted to do in the first place. However, I think it was okay, all things considered, because of COVID, because of the pandemic and all that, and sort of the delay of the music industry coming back. I think it was okay. The next one's not going to take so long. I don't intend to. And I think that now we're kind of in that spot right there.
So I get about 200 pitches, as they're called, a day from labels and PR teams and what have you about new stuff coming out. And so you see the same stuff being recycled often in the way that these pitches are written. When Napalm send out the pitch for your album, you can tell that they're genuinely excited about the album. So, you know, it's nice to work with a bigger label like Napalm. They're a rising star in the world of metal. There's no doubt about that. Getting that confidence from, and even in their roster, you're a little bit of you're not the ugly duck, but the weird duck in their roster in a way, right? Like they focus a lot on, they grew as a black metal label. There are now a lot of European power metal on that label. They don't do a whole lot with American death metal bands. So getting that respect this early on, that inspires you. I mean, it's cool to see also obviously the tour options that then are presented and so on, but I'm sure that the relationship didn't necessarily go the way that you were anticipating 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, that was it was definitely something that was unexpected. I mean, we knew we wanted to be signed to a label. We knew we wanted to get to that point.
Right.
We didn't think it was going to happen at that point. You know, maybe we thought that by now we would be looking at signing to a label, but we consider ourselves lucky and very blessed to have made those connections and have had that opportunity. And honestly, like that was the label that some of our favorite bands were on, and we really were looking at as like, well, that's one of our favorite record labels, you know. I mean, we'd always watched music videos and seen that big.
It's still cool.
Iconic. It's such a great little intro. So we knew we wanted to be on that label, and just so happened that it all fell into place in a very perfect way there. And I'm happy with that, and it is inspiring being on the same roster as some really awesome bands. Now, we're pretty different than a lot of the stuff that they're doing, a lot of the stuff that's, I guess, popular right now, but we're making music that we like, and I write music that I like, and I don't think that's something that I'll ever compromise.
In these PR campaigns, everybody's always going to go like, oh, for fans of, and sounds like this a bit. And there's certain names that pop up in this, and you have to do that. You have to claim, tell people like, hey, this is what, you know, it kind of sounds like. Bands like Insomnium obviously are referenced quite a few times when people talk about you guys. But it is, I mean, you have to put labels on it, but it is true that you guys seem to fit in more in European scenes or European sound than in a quote-unquote traditional American sound. Even when it comes to melodic death metal, there's clear American sound to that as well. So is that from watching music videos of European bands as when you were younger, or where did that inspiration come from?
Yeah, early on, like when I was a teenager, for instance, I discovered a lot of my music through, I don't know if you remember the website Last.fm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Last.fm used to be where I discovered all my music, and they had a great recommendation radio that I guess had a really good way of, you know, it had a really good algorithm. I don't know. It showed me a lot of my favorite stuff, and so I would sit there and I'd be working on something, and I'd be listening to the recommendation radio, and sometimes it was just like banger after banger. I'd be like, God, like I discover these bands, and I got into a lot of the stuff that I didn't really even pay attention to where it was from or anything. I just knew it struck a chord with me, and it turns out a lot of the stuff is from Europe, and a lot of stuff is from Finland, Sweden, Norway, etc. And so, you know, I never at any point set out to write music that sounded like it was from a certain region or sounded like a certain band or any stuff, you know. So any of the but I do think it's incredibly important to understand who your audience is, and I would say that to any up and coming band, that if you don't know who your audience is, then that's a problem. You know, you really need to understand who you're making music for, and who is going to be enjoying your music, who is going to enjoy your music at the very least. So I think the comparisons are fair. However, at no point, especially with this album Shatter and Fall that we made, it was something specific that we definitely did not specifically pull any influence from any one band or anything like that. We really set out, in fact, that was one of the main goals for the album, was to find our own voice and cut through a lot of the stuff, and really make something that was unique. If there was a chord progression or a riff or a melody that I thought was too similar to band X, Y, or Z, it just didn't get used. And and so it was only the most unique stuff that we made, that, and the most forward thinking in our own context of our own band. That material was the only material that made it onto the album.
You guys deal with some darker themes and lyrics on this album, but at the same time, not unusual as well for melodic death metal bands, there's a, I don't even know if that's a word, but there's a danceability to the music. There's when you're playing these, and this is a question I've asked a few people, because I find it interesting. I find it interesting. Like, what's your experience when you're playing songs that truly deal with some dark demons, but people are having fun and dancing to that music? Like, is that weird? Like, do you sometimes go like, "Hey guys, do you realize what we're talking about here? Like, you shouldn't be having a smile on your face and shaking
No,
your
you should
ass."
be
Like,
upset. You
yeah,
should be
you should be
angry or
depressed.
sad. Yeah. No, I think that I think that's one of the great things about this genre, though, and that's one of my
Right.
favorite things about it is that melodic death metal and melodic doom, melodic metal like this, melodic extreme metal,
Yeah.
is there's a beauty and darkness to it, and it can be groovy. It can be like you can bob your head to it. It can be catchy or memorable or kind of poppy, but it also has that darkness to it and has that depth of emotion to it. And I love the combination of the two personally. And that's where it strikes a chord with me. I really
Yeah.
like stuff that is there's the heaviness and the grooviness and the element of it that is just where you can move to it, but also that it's contrast. It's got light and dark within it. It's
Right.
perfectly balanced in my opinion, in a good band or a good song like that.
The band comes from Austin, Texas, which is known for music, not necessarily for melodic death metal. I've been to Austin many times. I used to go there quite a bit for work. Never really got it, or never really understood what the local metal scene was doing, because I mean, there's a lot of music in Austin, but what's brewing, and I'd love to understand, like, are we seeing more bands that are thinking outside of the quote unquote American music box? Because we see power metal in the States that is very European influenced. We're starting to see symphonic metal bands in the States that have a more European flavor, and we're starting to see melodic death metal bands that are more Euro flavor. Like, is that something that is brewing in the States? Is that a very local thing? What's going on in Austin?
Yeah, I think Austin, Texas is like the live music capital of the world if you play country or indie.
Right.
I think that there's a lot of we have a good metal scene here, though. We do. It's like you said, it's very American focused and American centric, though. There's a lot of death metal, a lot of, I guess, slam death. There's a lot of like black metal and deathcore, that kind of stuff here. We have a lot of that. We have some thrash bands. I think there are some bands that are up and coming that are thinking outside the box a little bit. One of our friends down in, I think, San Antonio. Sorry if that's not correct. Dawn of Existence. That's a band from Texas that they're up and coming. One of our favorite bands who we were friends with, Forebode. They're no longer exactly around, but our guitar player was in that band for a little bit. That's another band that was kind of they were like doom metal, and there was some really great stuff in there. There's some bands that were thinking outside the box that we know, but yeah, it's sort of, I mean, that's one of the problems with the metal scene here in Texas in general, not just Austin, is that there's like, there's a lot of like bands, there's a lot of amazing musicians, but like as being a melodic death metal, doom metal type band like this is such a niche genre.
Right.
It is not a perfect slot for us at all points. It would be easier if we lived in a European country. Like we would have an easier time, doing shows all the time. Yeah, it would be a lot simpler. There's just not as much of the scene for it.
There you go. But you are going there now because
yes, sir.
You're getting ready for a really fun tour with Wolfheart. So for all the people that are watching this interview who are on the road to one of your European shows and they're watching this on YouTube, what should they expect from the show?
Yeah, but we are. First of all, the whole night's going to be a high intensity night of melodic death metal, and we are we're doomy, but we're extreme. So we're not. We are. It's a hard hitting, crushing kind of melodic death doom. We don't. So it's going to be high energy from beginning to end with the show, and there's a lot of catchy melodies and great stuff from every single band on the bill. I think that it is going to be an awesome, it's going to be a great fucking night for anybody who loves melodic death metal and loves that kind of music. I think that we're going to surprise some people, and I think that some people are going to, I know we're going to make some new fans out there, because you can't be fans of this genre and not at least somewhat appreciate what we do.
There you go. And we have the quote of the day: you cannot like melodic death metal and not be a fan of HINAYANA. Well, hey Casey, first of all, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I wish you guys all the best with the release of this album, but first and foremost, I wish you the best of times touring Europe right now and making all those new friends and fans and surprising people that, yes, in fact, we are from Texas. We're not from Finland. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it, and I wish you guys the best with the release of this album.
Oh, thank you so much for the interview. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.